Welcome to the Candy Shop Show and the Diamond Network. This is Thursday, March 24th, 2016, and this is Candy Carroll talking tonight about many topics, including the Law of One and tarot cards. And so we just welcome everybody. We're going to have a little bit of discussion here first with some of the callers. Wednesday night, last night, with our guest speaker, Christopher Stephen Jacobs. He channeled a lot of the Agarthans and the Mist of Avatar, and Elizabeth had questions about some of the things that Benjamin Fulford had said, like the upcoming important speech that the Pope is working on. And I wondered, is there anyone on the call right now who has got to listen to the entire 10 minutes of Benjamin Fulford from March 22nd? Well, I got to listen to it this morning, and I would encourage everyone to listen. Now, Google tries to hide these a little bit, and you have to type it in specifically. You have to type in YouTube, Benjamin Fulford, March 22nd, 2016, and then it'll pop up. And, it is so fantastic. I listened to it twice. It's such good news, and it's telling you the behind the scenes of everything that's been going on in the last 2 or 3 weeks in the headlines. I wasn't particularly surprised because, we kind of stay up on top of things, we in the Diamond Network. But this one was really excellent. And so he said that the Pope was going to be making a major speech, and he was going to be exposing the crimes of the Vatican in the past. And it's just, you listen for it to yourself. Now, he did say that he couldn't swear by everything he was saying. He was just reporting some of the rumors that some of his sources had heard about the Pope. But, oh, my goodness, he spoke about the blackmail of Japan and the financial system and the plans to go for a gold-backed currency. And what was really exciting, this was amazing. You just want to hear him say it himself. And I'm going to be talking about this Monday night, too, because, I think I'll just go ahead and anyway, he said that Benjamin Fulford said that in Japan he had just finished this week taping a TV documentary expose in Japan that was going to air there in Tokyo on March 31st. And he felt like that this was the beginning of the full disclosure, because it was going to tell the truth about the criminal global banking system and what was really going on in a lot of the wars and many things. And he was very excited that they felt like in Japan that they had gotten enough power back that they could put on something so truthful. And I am just amazed that it's going to be airing on that very special date, March 31st. Before I go on, is Elizabeth with us for tonight's show yet? Is there anyone that... okay. Well, Sonny, you will appreciate this. Anyone who has read the UFO Bible, Oahspe, in the Book of Inspiration, and people should really Google Oahspe, Oahspe, Book of Inspiration, and read the entire book. Now, it's a short book. You could certainly read it in a day. The whole Oahspe is 1,000 pages, and that would probably be too big of a study right now. But near the end of it, it talks about some of the holidays and special events that people should be observing. And, you know, Oahspe, as well as our the people that, archaeologists, they talk about the cycles, and the cycles are, around 3,000 years. And, of course, we are, and then they add up to 26,000 years, which we are coming to the close of the last 26,000 year cycle. And this, or the beginning of the new one. And anyway, this cycle began in 1848, and to honor and remember that the veil began to drop in 1848 to reveal some of the mysteries of that our Creator has in store for us. And what happened in 1848 is the table wrapping from the Fox sisters. And with the questions and answers from the spirits in the table wrapping, they were able to demonstrate that, yes, life continued after death. And that began the new cycle. And in the Oahspe, they talk about having a short ceremony and having a veil and using this veil in your ceremonies. And every March I would do this with my children as we were growing up, and whoever else might be on the land with my husband and I. And the date that we have all been charged to celebrate for the last 100 years was March 31st. So I just thought that was kind of exciting that this disclosure is going to happen in Japan on March 31st. It kind of signified, how the veil began to drop back in 1848 and will drop even further here in 2016. Sonny, do you remember your father practicing that holiday on March 31st?
Yeah. What did you say, Candy? I was muted. Did my father celebrate what? Hello?
Yes, the holiday on March 31st every year.
No.
The beginning of our cycle.
Yeah, that's something I don't remember. I don't think you did.
And then there was the Constitution Day. We were also supposed to celebrate.
Yeah,
we were supposed to use a sheet of paper to represent our Constitution, and a pen to represent, or a quill, the signing of our government that was created with freedom from religious oppression.
That was brought up by Sue and Sandolph when they came, and the other people. Yeah, I remember them bringing that up.
Yeah. Well, it's all in the Book of Inspiration, and some people who read and study the Oahspe, like your father and Sandolph, practice the celebrations, and some do not. Well, I guess since Elizabeth isn't here to read from the Rising of the Dawn, I guess I'll go ahead and talk about the Law of One. people will recall that it was revealed through channeling in 1981, which was exactly 100 years after Owaspy was channeled in 1881. And I'm looking at book 4, if anybody happens to have the Law of One book with them. And I was going to ask Misty to do this little part with me. At the back of the book, it has about a dozen of the tarot cards, and it has black and white drawings of the Egyptians. And I opened it up to the card called the Chariot, which is also called the Great Way of the Mind. And Misty, do you have the Chariot there? And would you like to read and share what it has to say?
I would love to, but you have to give me just a few seconds to get back upstairs.
Okay. I'm going to be sharing a little bit of the questions and answers. You know, back in the day, the Raw asked humans to ask specific questions back in 1981. They did not want to challenge and stress humans by talking way over their heads. Of course, the 3 humans that asked the Raw to help us and to share information were quite brilliant, and they had studied all of the Owaspy, so they got some clues there of what to ask to be elaborated. Jim McCarty, Don Elkins, and Carla, the medium that was in trance and shared and let the Raw use her vocal cords to share the information. Well, Misty, have you got the Chariot there?
I do. So the equivalent to the Chariot in my tarot is power. And the key words are success, change, and balance. And well, can you hear me?
That sounds perfect just before Benjamin Fulford reveals everything on March 31st and gives more power to the people. Well, yes, go ahead and share more.
Okay. So the description of this card is that this is a card of those individuals who achieve greatness and understand that true power is gained by tapping into the divine. The Tiger Man, a muscular and powerful shapeshifter, moves at full speed across a shallow river during the height of the brilliant noonday sun. A child of the powers of water, the shapeshifter has the ability to reflect that which is above and that which is below. The tiger, mouth wide open, is the vehicle of the man's consciousness, and together they become polarized as one, reflecting one another. As the most powerful predator on Earth, the Tiger Man leaps through the water, charging beyond the bounds of ordinary reality, pushing the envelope into multidimensional awareness. He travels through the level sands of time that stretch from incarnation to incarnation. Radiant light surrounds him. It's as though he renders the flames of the sun into spiritual energy. His hands and arms raised high to the sun into spiritual energy. Oops. Sorry.
Wow.
I'm going to reread that part. His hands and arms raised high to the sky in ecstasy. Superimposed behind him is the figure of the Sphinx, symbol of mercy and justice, combining the diverse elements of a woman's head and a lion's body. The Sphinx is the Virgin and lion joined together. The Sphinx represents the great riddler and knows the secrets of the universe, secrets that are said to be buried beneath the Sphinx herself. This knowledge is available to everyone willing to tap in. Okay, so that's the end of the description. And now I'll read the prophecy.
Okay.
Okay. Change, movement, and travel are indicated. A card of expanded spiritual ability and personal evolution. Power represents your ability to do many things simultaneously. Allow yourself to blend your cosmic and earthly powers, understanding the boundlessness of existence. Representing the universal principle of change, causation, and strength of will, power is all about overcoming fear. The power card suggests a time for centering and personal balance, integrating action and contemplation. There's more.
Good.
Then through sorry?
Go ahead.
Okay. Then through choice, you are able to select changes that are fortunate, abundant, and positive. Change becomes an opportunity for creating new experiences that expand your connection to oneness. This card indicates success and energy for those involved with the creative arts. Included is creativity in a tangible and usable form, where you will triumph over financial matters. Dancing between tension and abandon, beware of the human tendency to corrupt or indulge in feelings of power. This is a card of merging and mastery of our human-animal passions, where opposing elements are positively combined and all is united through harmony and balanced opposition. The power is yours. Accept the thrill and the responsibility.
Wow. Yeah. Well, thank you. I mean, the card in this 1981 book is different, but it has the two Sphinx, and they are definitely showing the balance and the Chariot, and it's called the Chariot or the Conqueror, and obviously he's standing between the two pillars. Well, that's just great to share that. Is Elizabeth with us? Okay. I think I'm going to. Did you have any comment or further remark about that prophecy that you just read, Misty?
Well, basically, I can tell you it was the card that I needed to hear to get for myself. I think that. Ooh, that's strange.
Yeah.
What is that?
I don't know. I haven't muted the group yet. But I'm glad it was a blessing to you, and I'm going to go ahead and mute the group.
Okay.
Okay. Well, we're going to move on from the tarot card reading, and we're going to look at the Law of One books. And my listeners might recall that David Wilcox has written books about these revelations and refers to them in great detail. And they do take a great deal of study, but it's just amazing. I'm going to start on page 93 of Book 4 tonight. The questions are usually read by Don Elkin, and Jim McCarty is recording them and helps with the technological part, and Carla is laying prone in trance. And the material was all published before 1985, and fans of these books have read a lot of them on the internet, so they're free on YouTube. Don asked the question, as we see compassion developing in ourselves, is it more appropriate to balance this compassion with wisdom, or to allow the compassion to develop as much as possible without being balanced? Raw. I am raw. And that was always important, by the way, for him to say that. I'm not going to say it every time tonight, but there are so many fake entities that are out there. And the first step to test if you're talking to the real raw is that they will declare that I am raw. This query borders upon that type of question to which answers are unavailable due to the free will prohibitions upon information from your teachers. To the student of the balancing process, we may suggest that the most stringent honesty be applied. As compassion is perceived, it is suggested that in balancing this perception be analyzed. It may take many, many essays into compassion before true universal love is the product of the attempted opening and crystallization of this all-important springboard energy center. Thus, the student may discover many other components to what may seem to be all-embracing love. Each of these components may be balanced and accepted as part of the self and as transitional material as the entity seat of learning moves ever more clearly into the green ray. And, of course, the green ray, he's referring to the heart chakra and of love. But now, by 2016, the heart chakra is not just green flower, but it is a green and pink pebbles on the flower that spins if healthy. When it is perceived that universal love has been achieved, the next balancing may or may not be wisdom. If the adept is balancing manifestations, it is indeed appropriate to balance universal love and wisdom. If the balancing is of mind or spirit, there are many subtleties to which the adept may give careful consideration. Love and wisdom, like love and light, are not black and white, shall we say, but faces of the same coin, if you will. Therefore, it is not in all cases that balancing consists of a movement from compassion to wisdom. We may suggest at all times the constant remembrance of the density from which each adept desires to move. This density learns the lessons of love. In the case of wanderers, there are half-forgotten overlays of other lessons and other densities. We shall leave these considerations with the questioner and invite observations, which we shall then be most happy to respond to in what may seem to be a more effectual manner. And Don asked, what changes of functions were most effective in producing the evolution desired due to the veiling process? I am raw. We are having difficulty retaining clear channel through this instrument. It is a safe margin of transferred energy, but it is experiencing pain flares. May we ask that you repeat the query as we have better channel now? And Carla had very poor health. And that kind of added to her channeling ability, but also made things difficult at times. Don, after the veiling process, certain veiled functions or activities must have been paramount in creating evolution in the desired polarized directions. I was just wondering which of these had the greatest effect on polarization. I am raw. The most effectual veiling was that of the mind. And for those of you who were on the Candy Shop show last night, when I was interviewing Christopher Stephen Jacobs, you heard him speak about the harvesters putting this type of implant in the back of each of our brains, and that was like controlling our minds and making things twisted and confused, and that we're working forward. We're looking towards getting rid of those mind control things. Don says, I would like to carry that on to find out what specific functions of the mind were most effectual and the 3 or 4 most effective changes brought about to create the polarization. I am raw. This is an interesting query. The primary veiling was of such significance that it may be seen to be analogous to the mantling of the earth over all the jewels within the earth's crust, whereas previously all facets of the Creator were consciously known. After the veiling, almost no facets of the Creator was known to the mind. Almost all was buried beneath the veil. Isn't that interesting? Law goes on. If one were to attempt to list those functions of mind most significant and that they might be of aid in polarization, one would need to begin with the faculty of visioning, envisioning, or far-seeing. Without the veil, the mind was not caught in your illusionary time. With the veil, space-time is the only obvious possibility for experience. Also, on the list of significant veiled functions of the mind would be that of dreaming. The so-called dreaming contains a great deal which, if made available to the conscious mind and used, shall aid in its polarization to a great extent. The third function of the mind, which is significant and which has been veiled, is that of the knowing of the body. The knowledge of and control over the body, having been lost to a great extent in the veiling process, is thus lost from the experience of the seeker. Its knowledge before the veiling is of small use. Its knowledge after the veiling, and in the face of what is now a dense illusion of separation of body complex from mind complex, is quite significant. You know, I think this is talking about how come we lost that power that Misty was talking about. Before we all had this direct connection with Source, and we had so much power to co-create and envision and materialize that which was wonderful and that which was good. And then we lost that power with the veiling, and part of that veiling was apparently what the harvesters did to us. Perhaps the most important and significant function that occurred during the veiling of the mind from itself is not in itself a function of mind, but rather is a product of the potential created by this veiling. This is the faculty of will or pure desire. We may ask for brief queries at this time, although there is energy remaining for this working. Don said, I will just ask in closing, is an individualized portion or entity of Ra inhabiting Carla's body for the purpose of communication? And then they just said something about how to make her more comfortable. Okay. Well, you can tell there the depth of what the Ra was sharing in 1981. What is the present situation with our fifth density service to self-polarized companion? I am Ra. The period which you may call crisis remains. Can you tell me anything of the nature of this crisis? The polarity of your companion is approaching the critical point at which the entity shall choose either to retreat for the knots and leave any greetings to fourth density minions or lose polarity. The only other potential is that in some way this group might lose polarity, in which case Carla could continue its form of greeting. In the last session, you had mentioned the properties precipitating from the veiling of the mind, the first being envisioning. Would you explain the meaning of that? I am Ra. Your language is not overstrown with non-emotional terms for the functional qualities of what is now termed unconscious mind. The nature of mind is something which we have requested that you ponder. However, it is, shall we say, clear enough to the casual observer that we may share some thoughts with you without infringing them on your free will learning experiences. Now, I want to remind you that they were very, very conscious of that, because the Ra came 18,000 years ago and helped build the Great Pyramid, And then they were trying to help some more, and it all went badly. And there was a big setback in the Egyptian culture. And then they came back 11,000 years ago and tried again to help the Egyptians and humans. And again, they ignored the universal instructions not to interfere with free will. And what they thought in their wisdom that would help humans actually set everything back. You know, and Egypt has never been the same. And so they're very careful about, you know, free will. And like when a few weeks ago on the Candy Shop show, we asked that the Agarsons all mediated their differences and came together. We were asked if this was a formal request of our own free will, and I said yes. And so it proceeded. Well, it's very important to give the galactics our permission to help us, because of the past experiences. The Raw and the other galactics are very hesitant to act. And I think that this is the wonderful beauty of the Diamond Network, that Elizabeth has drawn together a core group of humans, and we understand the importance of forgiveness, and we forgive the harvesters, we forgive the draconians, and we ask of our own free will for help from the Pleiadians and the Sirians and the Ra, etc. I am Ra. The nature of the unconscious is of the nature of concept rather than word. Consequently, before the veiling, the use of the deeper mind was that of the use of unspoken concepts. You may consider the emotive and connotative aspects of a melody. One could call out in some stylized fashion the terms of the notes of the melody. One could say quarter note A, whole note F. This bears little resemblance to the beginning of the melody of one of your composer's most frequent influential melodies, that known to you as a symbol of victory. This is the nature of the deeper mind. There are only stylized methods with which to discuss its functions. Thusly, our descriptions of this portion of the mind, as well as the same portions of body and spirit, were given terms such as far-seeing, indicating that the nature of penetration of the veiled portion of the mind may be likened unto the journey too rich and exotic to contemplate adequate describing thereof. You know, just like I was trying to describe that beautiful sunset I saw a couple of nights ago. It's so beautiful. And most of my listeners probably heard, again, on Elizabeth Diamond's Monday show a couple of weeks ago, imploring us to all go out and experience beauty in nature, and to project and send out the wonderful, uplifting vibrations that we receive and can experience through the appreciation of the beauty of nature, and multiply that everywhere. Questioner, you have stated that dreaming, if made available to the conscious mind, will aid greatly in polarization. Could you define dreaming or tell us what it is and how it aids? I am Ra. Dreaming is an activity of communication through the veil of the unconscious mind and the conscious mind. The nature of this activity is wholly dependent upon the situation regarding the energy center blockages, activations, and crystallizations of a given complex. In one who is blocked at 2 of the 3 lower energy centers, dreaming will be of value in the polarization process in that there will be a repetition of those portions of recent catalysts as well as deeper health blockages. Therefore, giving the waking mind clues as to the nature of these blockages in the first, second, and third chakras, and hints as to possible changes in perception which may lead to the unblocking. This type of dreaming or communication through the veiled portions of the mind occurs also with those individuals which are functioning with far less blockage and enjoying the green ray activation or higher activation at those times at which the individual experiences catalyst, momentarily reblocking or baffling and otherwise distorting the flow of energy influx. Therefore, in all cases, it is useful to an individual complex to ponder the content and emotive resonance of dreams. Again, Ross said it is useful to the individual to ponder the content and the emotions of the dream. You know, a lot of dream interpreters will say it's not so much what you see in the dream, it's your feelings about it that is what you should ponder. The Raw continues, for those whose green ray energy centers have been activated, as well as for those whose heart chakra centers are offered an unusual unblockage due to extreme catalysts, such as what may be termed physical death of the self, or one which is beloved occurring in what you may call your near future. Dreaming takes on another activity. This is what may loosely be termed precognition, or a knowing which is prior to that which shall occur in physical manifestation in your yellow third density chakra. This property of the mind depends upon its placement to a great extent, so that the terms of present and future and past have no meaning. Wow. Wouldn't it be great if we could all understand that? Even better than now. This will, if made proper use of by the individual, enable this entity to enter more fully into the all-compassionate love of each and every circumstance, including those circumstances against which an entity may have a strong feeling towards what you might call unhappiness. See, we're supposed to have love even for the circumstances that stress us. As an individual consciously chooses the path of the ADAP and with each energy balance to a minimal degree, begins to open the indigo ray chakra, the so-called dreaming becomes the most efficient tool. For if it is known by the adept that work may be done in consciousness while the so-called conscious mind rests, this adept may call upon those which guide it, those presences which surround it, and most of all the magical personality, which is the higher self, as it moves into the sleeping mode of consciousness. With these affirmations attended to, the activity of dreaming reaches that potential which is most helpful to increasing the distortions of the adept towards its chosen polarity. You know, we're all trying to choose the polarity of being service to self or service to others. There are other possibilities of the dreaming not so closely aligned with the increase in polarity, which we do not cover at this particular time. How is the dream designed or programmed? Is it done by the higher self, or who is responsible for this? I am raw. In all cases, the mind, body, spirit, individual makes what use it can of the faculty of the dreaming. It itself is responsible for this activity. I'll read that again. In all cases, the individual makes what use it can of the faculty of the dreaming. It is responsible itself for this activity. Then you are saying that the subconscious is responsible for what I will call the design or script writer for the dream? This is correct. Is the memory that the individual has upon waking from the dream usually accurate? Is the dream easily remembered? You must realize that we are overgeneralizing in order to answer your queries, as there are several sorts of dreams. However, in general, it may be noted that it is only for a trained and disciplined observer to have reasonably good recall of the dreaming. This faculty may be learned by virtue of a discipline of the recording immediately upon awakening of each and every detail which can be recalled. This training sharpens one's ability to recall the dream. The most common perception of an individual of dreams is muddied and quickly lost. So, folks, when I was recording my dreams, all I had to do was to write down one word. And that word, in the morning, when I looked at it, would trigger the memories of the dream in great detail. And I could write out 2 or 3 pages, and it was just a snippet of the actual dream. But then I could go back and I could highlight different things, and I began to understand the symbols of my own dreams. And now that we're going from 3rd dimension to 4th to 5th dimension, the galactics have told Chris that our dreams, the kinds of dreams we're having, are memories, especially the nightmares. They are memories of instances that we need to practice some forgiveness and love in regards to. We need to process those things that happened to us in the past, maybe when we had some missing time. In remembering dreams, Don asked, you are saying that the individual can find specific clues to current energy center blockages and may therefore reduce those blockages? Yes, this is so. Is there any other function of dreaming that is of value in the evolutionary process? Isn't that interesting? Of course, Chris has just taught us to just set our intention that our all of our chakras, and don't limit it to just 7, are clear and spinning in the right direction. Apparently the male's chakra spins in the opposite directions as the female, and I was trying to get that figured out. And it's not necessary. Just set your intention. I, as a female, desire that my chakras are cleared, bright, beautiful, and spinning in the proper direction, and spinning well. I am raw. Although there are many which are of some value, we would choose 2 to note. Since these 2, though not of value in polarization, whether you're may be of value in a more generalized sense. The activity of dreaming is an activity in which there is made a finely wrought and excellently fashioned bridge from conscious to unconscious. In this state, the various distortions which have occurred in the energy web of the body complex due to the misprison with which energy influxes have been received are healed. With the proper amount of dreaming comes the healing of these distortions. Continued lack of this possibility can cause seriously distorted mind, body, spirit complexes. So, they're reminding us that if something is happening that's preventing us to going into the REM sleep, that, the sleep that produces dreams, that we're going to get in a bad way, it's very critical that we do dream. The other function of the dreaming, which is of aid, is that type of dream which is visionary and which prophets and mystics have experienced from days of old. Their visions come through the roots of mind and speak to a hungry world. Thus, the dream is of service without being a personally polarizing nature. However, in that mystic or prophet who desires to serve, such service will increase the entity's polarity. Question. There is a portion of sleep that has been called REM. Is this the state of dreaming? Yes. It was noticed that this occurs in small units during the night with gaps in between. Yes. If it is any value to know that, would you tell me why the dreaming process works with these gaps? The portions of the dreaming process which are helpful for polarization and also for the vision of the mystic take place in time, space, and consequently use the bridge from metaphysical to physical for what seems to be a brief period of your space-time. The time-space equivalent is far greater. The bridge remains, however, and translates each distortion of the individual as it has received the distortions of energy influxes so that healing may take place. This healing process does not occur with the incidence of rapid eye movement, but rather occurs largely in the space-time portion of the individual using the bridge to time-space for the process of healing to be enabled. You mentioned the loss of knowledge and control over the body as being a factor that was helpful in the evolutionary process due to veiling. Could you enumerate the important losses of knowledge and control of the body? This query contains some portions which would be more helpfully answered were some intervening material requested. I am at a loss to know what to request. Well, I think that I am going to pause at this point. We've covered a lot about dreaming. Elizabeth, are you online? I wonder if anyone has called Elizabeth to see what she's up to. She did not tell me that she was going to be late. She was speaking last night about everything, about our show. But would anybody like to comment or do a *6 and comment on these passages that I'm reading from the Law of One?
Candy?
Yes.
This is Pat. What I can share is that I love the Ra books, and it's especially weird to me because I had a dream of the spear beings, those big navy indigo blue balls, like several years ago before I ever heard of, Corey Good and all of that stuff. And I thought at the time it was just the weirdest dreams. But I also had heard about the Ra group and these channelings way back in the early 1980s because Carla Ruckert was a friend of mine who was real big in the metaphysical movement. In fact, you might have known her, Candy, because I think she was more your generation. She passed away about 10 years ago, and she was in her early 90s. Her name was Ella Vivian Power. She was part of the Quimby Center and the Quimby movement and Neva Dell Hunter back in the 70s and 80s in New Mexico. Did you know her?
Well, I knew about Van Tassel in New Mexico and the events at Giant Rock when the spaceships would land there. But no, I don't recall her name and work. Yes.
But in any case, that was a long time ago for me. And they had talked about the Ra transmissions. And I'm like, so it all made perfect sense to me. But when I got the books, like maybe 3 or 4 years ago, one of the things I noticed is it's that they're very, very clear, but they use a language that is hard to understand. And what ends up happening to me is especially if I'm tired, like I am tonight, I start to zone out after a while, and I lose the thread of what they're trying to say. So I think for me, anyways, I have to kind of take it in small dosages and kind of sit with it for a while, because otherwise I just get lost in the words.
I know, and and I try to abbreviate some of the things so it would be easier for my listeners to hear, because I realize that when they say mind, body, spirit complex, what they mean is individual. So I substituted individual so it would be easier, to hear tonight, and I did that several times. And of course, they always use these phrases like learn, teach, and teach, learn, because they wanted to make the emphasis there that you learn by teaching. Yeah. And
this phrase, he teaches best that which he most needs to learn.
I would encourage my listeners to, if you haven't listened to my workshops, I would hope that you would do that. They're on the Diamond Network channel. There's a picture of me on them. I did them in, they were put up in November or December, and they tell my metaphysical journey, through my life, and how I found the channeling of 1881 when I was 25 years old, and the many experiences that I had been a part of the Edgar Cayce movement before, when I was like 22, and and then in more recent years, I so appreciate my friend in Springfield, Missouri, that introduced me to the Anastasia books, and from there, after I read many of those 10 books, then she shared with me the Law of One books, and it's just been such a great backdrop for me to have this material before I was introduced to Christopher Stephen Jacobs, and he was able to scan and read me, and for me to understand that I definitely have the bird tribe as my own personal guide.
Well, I wanted to also give you your props for how well you read the Raw group, because I was listening and I'm going, as tired as I am, I can follow what she's saying, and that's not usually true. And there is like an energetic connection that comes across in the way you read it. So I just wanted to thank you for that.
Oh, you're making me smile. Thank you, Pat. Thank you so much. Well, I had envisioned doing a lot more of these books on these Thursday shows before now, but have only touched on it, actually, because I did so much with the Anastasia. But I'm going to be doing, after listening a little bit to David Wilcox, I think it is time for me to get into the Law of One, as well as Anastasia. So thank you for that. And do you or anyone else on the call have another comment or question to what I've presented this evening?
I also wanted to thank you for tapping into, the importance of that right now, because I had shared with your group a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month ago now, that I had to go and confront literally the Nazi high order around here over my house, because they're trying to steal my house. And they have threatened me and assaulted me and done all kinds of insane things. And I had gone down there, I think it was the end of January, and I read the Law of One to the whole group, and the response was pretty amazing. I mean, it was like there was a massive energy shift. And
that's wonderful there in Texas.
Pardon me?
That's wonderful what you did there in Texas. And it was
up a hornet's nest.
Yeah.
Stirred up a hornet's nest. It sure did. But I had to go back just last night. What's today's Thursday? No, it was Tuesday night before last. And I had to confront them in a smaller meeting because they were escalating their threats against me. And they made physical threats against me. I mean, they actually had a guy in a police uniform pull a gun on me. And they pulled some shenanigans at my bank. Because, see, here, the way these guys are, these service-to-self Nazi people that have kind of taken over our country, they have, they're all Freemasons. And they, they get told something down at the lodge, and they don't even know why they're doing it, but they just go out and do the rattiest, most evil things, and they think it's okay because, their brothers down at the lodge told them to do it. So some of them don't even know what's going on, but it makes life around here, kind of like being in downtown Baghdad. You never know what's coming up next. But I went down there and I read it again last night, and it was really, really strange because the head person who visually, if you get a picture of Adolf Hitler in drag, that's what the person looked like and talked like, and was so offensive again in her behavior. And at one point when they were kind of attacking me, this is so bizarre, but I had just read The Law of One, and it made them speechless. So there was, again, this dead silence where they didn't know what to do with that energy,
Wow, yeah.
And here's where the occult stuff comes out. A huge black horsefly flew out from behind this woman's head and came flying straight at me. And I didn't even think about it. I just kind of sensed it bounce off of my energy field about 3 feet from my body, and it veered off to my left and hit somebody that had just entered the room behind me, who is also a very nasty bit of business. and it was almost like, okay, now here's where the blue avians, I hope it was them talking through me, because I don't have the awareness of people like Chris. But what flew out of my mouth next was I gave them some written proof of them engaging in racketeering. And I said, I'm not trying to cause trouble for you, but I have heard a rumor that y'all are being investigated under the RICO Act for racketeering. And I'm just telling you, these are papers that you sent me. And since you've already told me you don't even know what your buddies over here are sending out to people, I think you may want to know that, that this is evidence of racketeering. So
good for you.
So I said, you may want to do something about this, and I said, and I just looked at him and I said in the most loving way I could, I'm generally speaking a live and let live kind of person, but y'all have been going at me for 30 years, and I'm getting tired about it. So when I heard, and this is, I have no idea where this came from. It just flew out of my mouth. But I have heard that there's a new sheriff in town, and the new sheriff wears blue shirts, not brown ones.
Good for you. Good for
wow.
you.
I don't even know where those words came from. I was very nervous about it when I was driving home because I kept thinking to myself, where did that come from? I knew what I was referencing. I'm not sure if they knew what I was referencing, but they were hanging on every word. And after that, they could not make eye contact with me.
Yeah. The Law of One is so powerful.
And shirt being the blue avians and the Law of One.
And it's wonderful that Elizabeth uses it daily in her home life and encourages us to do so as well. And I'm trying to embrace that habit, and I certainly see the results in my own life when I recall to use just like I was doing this burning ritual a couple of days ago to burn away old things and get them clear the energies, and it was very windy, and the fire got out of control, and it was burning up the leaves, and it was headed towards one of my buildings on my farm, and I just prayed the law of one, and as I was rushing to get a bucket of water, that the highest good, and of course in that kind of a situation, I mean, on a physical level, you could imagine that maybe the fire would kill some ticks or something like that, and but I was able to. It looked a little dicey there for a second, but after I said the prayer, I was able with the unseen helpers to get the fire put out.
Well, I think that's how I'm experiencing. It's nothing like being in a very scary situation and trying something completely and totally off the wall that 90% of the people are going to think you're stark raving crazy for talking like that. But they didn't respond like that. They responded like they were in church all of a sudden. That was and I don't know what they're going to do with it, but what it did to me was it gave me good practice and just, going with it. And if I screw up, I'll suffer the consequences, because I wasn't intending any. I was genuinely feeling bad for some of the people in that room, that they were just on an ego trip. They weren't really evil, and they didn't know what they were being sucked into.
Right,
right.
Well, listen, our time is about up. Thank you for sharing that.
And thank you for sharing the law of one again. Good night.
I'm going to say the law of one, and I ask each of you to think about your own personal situation and embrace that energy, and hold Elizabeth's diamond in the light as we close. We are all one, and when one is harmed, all are harmed. And when one is helped and loved and healed, all are helped and loved and healed. And my name is I Am. And I ask in the name of I Am that the highest good of all concerned happen here and now throughout all time and space. And I know that it is done, and I am grateful.
Are you looking for healing or a change in your life to help you enjoy it more fully? You might benefit from a galactic energy reading and clearing from Chris Jacobs. Chris will work with you on a soul level to clear unseen negative influences, implants, programs, contracts, and energetic blocks. Chris Jacobs is a gifted energy healer. Contact him today at ChristopherStephenJacobs@gmail.com.